these.
All right, go ahead.
Professor Hingartner, you started to state your education.
Yes, I received my PhD in Berkeley from the Department of Statistics in 1993. I completed a master's in statistics at the University of Waterloo in Canada in 1988, and I completed an honors degree in mathematics from Université Laval in Quebec City in 1997.
Sir, what are your duties as an associate professor of statistics at Yale University?
My duties include teaching, research, and administrative duties.
And what classes do you teach?
I teach a wide range of classes. I teach applied statistics, I teach probability, and I teach the theory of statistics.
Okay. And what are your research interests?
My research concern methodology. They also involve data analysis and looking at numbers to learn from numbers, essentially.
And so you mentioned administrative duties. What are your administrative duties?
I'm currently the director of undergraduate studies for statistics at Yale University.
So in addition to your responsibilities as an associate professor at Yale, do you do any other employment?
I also am retained and am working on 2 cases for the district attorney on essentially inspection or related to Medicaid fraud.
And so what are your duties in those cases?
In those cases, I am asked to collect data and analyze data. The data I'm supposed to collect are actually billing statements submitted by doctor to Medicare and trying to analyze the results.
Okay. Do you do any other consulting work?
I've done some other consulting work also. I've helped design a sampling plan for the study of the establishment of a community center in Hartford.
Your Honor, we would like to offer Professor Hingartner as an expert in the field of statistics.
Any objection? Without objection, you may proceed.
Professor, what is the field of statistics?
Simply put, I think it's trying to answer complex questions using numerical facts that we call data.
And what do you use statistics for? What are they used for commonly?
They're commonly used to shed light, to make interpretations from numbers on events that are of relevance. They are used to essentially learn from numbers.
How did you become involved in matters related to the election of the president in the year 2000?
I was contacted by an economist from Washington, which is affiliated to the Democratic Party.
And do you understand? You have an understanding as to how this economist got your name?
Yes. I understand that the chairman of my department, David Pollard, referred my name to him, saying that I might be a very qualified person to do data analysis.
Did you have a prior relationship with the economist who called you?
Never heard of him before.
Did you have any prior relationship with the Democratic Party?
No, I don't.
Were you a registered Democrat?
No.
Registered Republican?
No.
Did you vote in the presidential election in 2000?
No, I didn't.
Why not?
I'm not a citizen.
Are you being compensated for your testimony here?
No, I'm not.
Is that normal for you in consulting, not to get compensated?
I hope not.
Well, what makes this one different?
Well, I must admit, it's probably an exciting problem. It's important. It provides visibility for both Yale University and also for myself. It's important professionally.
What was the initial task that you undertook after you had been contacted in connection with this matter?
The initial task was to look in trying to give a prediction on the probability that the results of the election might be overturned if a full recount would proceed in Miami, Broward, and Palm Beach.
Okay. Are you today offering any opinions on that subject?
No, sir.
What subject are you offering opinions on today?
I'm going to be offering an opinion about the undervote rate in Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, and Broward. and on how the recount or the recounted votes differ or are similar to the machine counted votes.
Okay. Sir, you used the term undervote. What is the undervote?
That's a good question. Let me try to explain. I'm sure everybody is aware what an undervote is, but what I understand an undervote to be is essentially any ballot that went through the machine at some point and did not register a vote for any candidate. That means the machine saw it as a blank.
Okay. And is that any candidate for any office?
That we are going to concentrate in this proceeding on, as far as I understand, the presidency of the United States.
How did you go about conducting your analysis that led to your opinions concerning the undervote?
The usual steps that a statistician would do: gather data, verify the data, analyze the data, and draw conclusions.
Okay. How was the data gathered?
In this particular case, the data was originally provided by people of the Democratic Party. It came from official newspaper sources.
Okay. And is that data just what was in the newspaper, what you're relying upon today?
No, it is not.
What else did you do to collect data?
It was my opinion that although I like to rely on newspapers, I don't trust them too much when there's an important matter at hand. And so I've tried to have written confirmation from every county, every 67 county in the state, to confirm the number of overvotes, undervotes, and other information which are pertinent to this matter.
Have you been successful in obtaining that information in the time allowed?
Given the short amount of time allowed, I must say I was surprised to get answers from over 50 counties so far.
And with respect to the counties where you haven't gotten an answer, what information are you using in those counties?
I will rely on the newspaper sources that I had previously.
What conclusion, sir, did you reach concerning the undervote in the presidential election in Florida in the year 2000?
The undervote rate, that means the percentage of individuals who did cast a ballot that were not registered by the machine count, varies. And it varies strikingly depending on if one uses a punch card or if one uses an optical scanner.
Okay. When you say an optical scanner, what kind of technology are you talking about there?
I'm referring to SIT types of forms, standard test form, where one takes a pencil and blacks out A, B, C, D, all of the above. And then essentially there's a machine that will read the marks on the test paper. It's standard procedure in academics to use things like that.
And with respect to punch cards, what is your understanding of that?
A punch card is an IBM card. As far as I understand, it's grown out from the 60s computer revolution. And essentially these are cards which one punches with a little piece of metal, the votes that one wants to cast.
And what did you say? Excuse me, Professor. Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Professor Hengardner, I'd like you to take a look at the first chart. Can you see that from there?
No, I can't.
Your Honor, would it be acceptable if the witness testified from the chart?
Stand down, but the council back here, they can't see. If you'd like to come around this way, then you can maybe sit down over here so you can see.
Your Honor, smaller copies have been distributed to all counsel.
All right. Go ahead, sir.
Would you come on around so you can actually see it and not shout across people? Okay. Professor Hengardner, what is recorded on this first chart?
Okay, on this first chart, we see here that when I analyze the data, I've observed that about 3 ballots cast in counties that used optical scanners did not register in the machine count. That corresponds to a percentage of 0.3%. 3 out of 1,000, it's easier to remember. When I compare this number to the number of undervotes I've observed in counties that used punch cards, there the rate was more like 15 ballots per 1,000 that did not register a vote for president. We're always concerned about the presidential vote here.
Professor, with respect to that, did you do any analysis to seek to determine whether or not there was an explanation for that observed difference?
Explanation. Yes, one can think of saying, well, there's a reason why they're different, and one of the reasons why they might be different is because the people living in the counties which use optical scanners or punch cards might be different. Different in which respect? Probably with ethnicity, maybe with income. And so I did use demographic data to verify that this difference, which is, by the way, a very large difference, cannot be explained, at least by any reasonable stretch of the imagination, by simple demographic variables.
In comparing, you said that's a very large difference. How large? What are the odds of that difference occurring by chance?
Yes. How large is it? One has to understand what a statistician do. A statistician thinks, well, imagine that there would be no difference in counties that use optical ballots, optical scanners, or punch cards. There would be no difference, and people go in and punch the cards or mark their ballots and get read. Then after the fact, you've observed that in the counties that use an optical scanner, 0.3% had an undervote, whereas 15% would have indeed 1.5% were undervote in the punch card counties. And you ask yourself, could that have arisen by chance? Assuming that you're the same. And the answer is, I can calculate this, assuming that you're the same, and the probability that this happens, or something even more extreme, is very remote. I would judge to say that it's less than winning the lottery.
Now, what is the final column on this chart show?
Yes. This is just an example. This is the average of all counties that use punch cards. Palm Beach did use punch cards, and as it turns out, its average undervote rate, that means the number of undervotes or ballots cast that the machine did not record, were 22 out of 1,000, which is markedly, again, higher than the average we've observed in the other counties that use punch cards.
I'd actually take a look at the second chart. What is shown on the first column of the second chart?
The first column, again, is the undervote rate, that is, we know what it is by now. It's the undervote rate in Palm Beach County before the manual recount occurred. That is, after the mandated machine recount. And it's the same percentage that was on the far right of the previous draft.
So, I'm sorry, sir. And
What's happening here is the plaintiffs in the case are showing a number of panels here for the next several minutes here. Some of these panels are the same panels that were shown earlier in the week to reporters here in Tallahassee, introduced by David Boyce, lead attorney for the Gore team. That first sheet that they just went past is the percentage of ballots that they believe with no recorded vote for president. What they're trying to establish is the difference between an optical ballot average as opposed to a punch card ballot average, which was widely used in Palm Beach and in Miami-Dade and in Broward, and the difference with the Palm Beach no vote for president. Clearly trying to make the point right here. Jeff Robinson, the attorney here in your screen for the Gore team, trying to explain to people how they believe there was a reason for the discrepancy for a number of people going to the polls on the 7th of November and not casting a vote for president. Again, this is after the lunch break, back inside with a new witness. This is Professor Nicholas Hengartner, who is now considered the key witness for the Gore team in this trial, and a statistician by training. We'll go back in and listen once again inside the courtroom here in Leon County.
Per thousand to 20 ballots per thousand.
And now, what is the relative difference between those two?
The relative difference would be, what is the difference divided by, that's 2 out of 1,000 divided by this 2%, so it would be 0.2 divided by 2, which is 10%. So the relative difference is 10%.
And what is with respect to that, that's the relative difference.
That's the relative difference.
what is the recovery rate that reflects when you move from the Palm Beach before manual recount to Palm Beach after the manual recount?
I think I need to define this for the court. The recovery rate corresponds to the number, the difference between the number of ballots that were counted for any of the presidents after the manual recount and before the manual recount. There's a difference that possibly some new ballots were counted or were observed. And if I take this number as a fraction of the undervote, this is known as the recovery rate. And so in the case of Palm Beach, the recovery rate was 8%.
0.8%.
No. This is. May I? This is.
Sure.
This is.
Yes, all right. Yeah.
8%.
Yeah.
It is confusing. I apologize, Your Honor.
Now, the chart that you just referred to, which is plaintiff's exhibit number 9, is titled Percentage of Votes Identified During Manual Recount.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and the 8% number that you referred to?
8% number again is the difference between the votes recorded after the manual recount and before the manual recount, tallied for any candidates of. In this, actually, here the 8% is tallied as. For any candidates, that's true. For any candidates in Palm Beach. And I take this as a fraction of the undervote.
I'm going to ask you to go back to this next chart, which is entitled Ballots with No Recorded Vote for President in Broward. This is one of the 3 charts that is part of plaintiff's exhibit number 54. So what's shown by this chart?
Okay. As we've done with Palm Beach, we also asked ourselves, what was the undervote in Broward County before the manual recount and after? And again, what we've observed is that before the manual recount, the undervote rate was 11 ballots per thousand, whereas after the manual recount, it dropped to 8 ballots per thousand. And if you ask me what is the relative change of this, I would say, well, it's a difference of 0.3 divided by 0.8, which is slightly above 0.35. A little bit more than a third, if you want. So it's a little bit more than a third.
And what was, looking back on it, we misspoke before, what is plaintiff's exhibit number 57, the chart with relative recovery rates. What was the relative recovery rate in Broward?
The relative recovery rate in Broward,
Right behind you.
right behind me, this one here, was 26%. Again, what was the difference in votes tallied for any presidential candidate before and after the hand count as a percentage of the undervote? And it turns out to be 26%.
Now, on the percentage of votes identified during manual recount for Miami-Dade, that 22%, what does that reflect?
As I'm sure everybody is aware in this courtroom, Miami-Dade did not complete the manual recount. So I did the calculation only on the precincts which were completely recounted. And in the precincts that were recounted, we found that the difference between the total tallied votes after the manual recount in those precincts and the total vote before divided by the undervote in those precincts. So it's really only on the portion that was completely counted is 22%, which is more or less in line with Broward County.
Just so that the record is clear, with respect to Palm Beach, with respect to Miami-Dade County, I'm asking you to look at the chart which says ballots with no recorded vote for president in Miami-Dade County, which is plaintiff's exhibit number 56. And what was, before the recount, across the county of Miami-Dade, what was the undervote rate?
The undervote rate before the recount was 1.6%. And I would like to mention that I don't know what the undercount is after the manual recount since it has not been completed.
Now, in looking at the effect of the manual recount, did you do anything to determine whether or not manual recount had any skewing in the votes that were identified?
Yes, there was a way to look at this. I'm not sure if the word skewing is appropriate, but one interesting question one has to ask is if the votes that were uncovered during the manual recount, how do they fall with respect to the distribution of votes that were counted by the machine? And I have one, well, let's see what happens. That's probably the best thing to do.
That's what you're referring to now as plaintiff's exhibit number 10, chart entitled Vote Shares in Broward.
So let me walk you through this graph. In Broward, after the mandated machine count, there was 31% as a party of major share. So we simply look at the Bush-Gore vote. 31% of the votes went for Bush, where 69 shares went for Gore. Now, I do the recount, and there was a determination made that some of the ballots could be assigned intent to vote, and these ballots, which could be identified in intent to vote, once I looked at for whom the vote fell, 34% of these ballots that were determined in the manual recount were 34%, whereas there was 66% for Gore, which is pretty much in line with those numbers. If anything, if it would be significantly different, it would be a difference in favor of Mr. Bush.
Now, one last chart, which is plaintiff's exhibit number 56, vote shares in Broward again. How does that chart relate to the previous?
It's actually the same chart, Your Honor. This is the statistician in me talking. Statistician likes to think about distribution. I like to think of the distribution before and the distribution after. This is how the distribution of machine counts look. Votes for Bush, votes for Gore. And this is, take this picture and simply look, does it have the same shape as the distribution of the additional votes or the votes that were uncovered during the manual recount in which people were able to attribute intention. And if you look, they look pretty much the same. Yes, it's true, Bush is slightly higher, but the general shape is the same. And that is the point of this graph, somehow to say there's not a big difference. Thank you very much.
Now, Professor Hingartner, after all this analysis, did you reach any conclusions concerning the recovery rate in Palm Beach County?
Yes, I did. The recovery rate in Palm Beach County is less than the recovery rate in both Miami-Dade and Broward County.
Okay. And did you reach any conclusions concerning the effect of the manual recount on the major party candidates? The effect on their share of the votes.
Insofar as it's changing the proportions after the manual recount, no, because the votes that were uncovered seem to follow in the same proportions than the ones that the machine counted previously.
And did you reach any conclusions concerning the manual recount and its effect on the disparity that you noted between punch cards and optical scan systems?
Well, the data shows that when there is a manual recount, the undervote rate decreases and gets closer to the undercount rate observed in in optical sensing using counties.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
Professor. I wanted the professor to remain. Let me find out if there's any cross.
Yes, Your Honor, there is.
Oh, all right. Here's some water. All right.
The man coming to the podium now is Phil Beck. If you were with us earlier today, he was the man who handled the majority of the questioning on the first witness, and apparently he will resume his duties now, hooking up a laptop that was again used earlier today. Again, Phil Beck, an attorney for the Bush team. As the testimony continues for Professor Nicholas Hengartner. Earlier, Chad was the most talked about issue. Now it is numbers and voting and stats back inside Circuit Court.
Several times that you only looked at the undervotes in the presidential election this last time around. Is that right?
This is what I talked about today.
And is that all that you looked at?
No, I also compared or looked at undervote rates. No, that's actually not true. No, I take it back. I did not look at undervote rates, only for presidents.
Okay, so we went through, were you here earlier today when we went through the ballot with the earlier witness?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, well, you're familiar, are you not, sir, with the fact that there was more than just the President of the United States race going on here in Florida this last November 7th?
Yes, I am.
And there were a lot of other offices that people were voting for, right?
Right.
Now, you looked at the undervotes for the votomatic machines versus the optical scanner machines only for the President of the United States, right?
Right.
You didn't look at how the undervotes would compare for the Senate race, if there was one, or the governor race, or the congressional races, and the judges, and all that sort of thing, did you?
I have not seen that data yet.
Now, you don't know, I take it, whether the same pattern that you talked about with your charts, that is that the votomatic machine has more undervotes for president than the optical scanning machine, you don't know whether that same pattern would hold true for all the other races, do you?
I have no clue.
And the fact that you have no clue about that is a fundamental flaw in your analysis from a statistical point of view, is it not, Professor?
No.
Well, now, you understand, do you not, that the people that you volunteered to testify for are claiming that the explanation for that difference, that the votomatics have a lot more undervotes than the optical scanners, that they're claiming that the reason for that difference is because there's something with the votomatic machine on the left-hand column where the presidential vote is, where the rubber's hard or the chads are built up, and people are trying to vote, but they're unable to. You understand that's their claim, right?
I've heard something like that mentioned in the news media.
Well, you also have submitted affidavits and a proffer of
We will
testimony.
not be leaving this particular hearing for long, but we do want to make mention here at CNN that there is some other news out there, and the news that we're talking about right now takes place about 230 miles above Earth. A 5-member crew on board the Space Shuttle Endeavour about to dock with the International Space Station any moment right now. This docking is critical because the crew is bringing new power supply along with it. 2 giant solar wings to be attached to the International Space Station to help recharge batteries and radiators and offer other sources of power on board the International Space Station. Both these wings together cost about $600 million. It's critical at this time because there are 3 established rooms inside the International Space Station, but one has been closed off because of a lack of power there. Again, 2 cosmonauts, 1 astronaut did arrive on board the International Space Station several weeks ago, but now they need the power, and they should get it once things are established. The solar wings are quite large, 240 feet long, 38 feet wide. NASA officials at Johnson Space Center outside of Houston keeping watch on this, and as we get closer, we will now listen to NASA at the Johnson Space Center.
8 inches. 2 inches. Contact. No contact. Well, capture confirmed. At Alpha, we confirm that. We see your loading lights flashing. Houston, capture confirmed.
That conversation confirming contact and capture, docking with the International Space Station at 2 p.m. Central Time as the two spacecraft 235 miles above Kazakhstan near the Kazakhstan-Russia border. Now the steering jets aboard the station are turned off, as well as the steering jets for Endeavour, and springs in the docking mechanism will dampen out any relative motion between the two spacecraft. Once that is done, then commands will be sent by the crew aboard Endeavour to retract the docking rings seen in this view from Endeavour and pull the spacecraft together, the 80-ton station and the 120-ton shuttle. Once they're pulled together, then hooks and latches will engage in the mechanism to firmly attach the two for the duration of Endeavour's stay.
Houston Endeavour for Max, coming up on 2 minutes and 20 seconds here. Looks like we have a ring aligned, and on your go, we'll do step 10.
Okay, and Endeavour, you go for step 10.
Copy, that's 2 minutes right there.
Nothing better than technology to bring us second-to-second updates from something happening 230 miles above planet Earth. The Space Shuttle Endeavour, a successful mission docking with the International Space Station, and from here, the crew of 5 will help transport 2 giant solar wings to help provide more power to the International Space Station. And they are the largest man-made structures ever employed in space. Meanwhile, back on Earth, in Tallahassee, Florida, inside of the Circuit Court building in Leon County, the hearing continues. I'm not sure if the astronauts voted this past election, but if they did, that would be one heck of an overseas absentee ballot. Back inside now, Phil Beck, again, the questioning attorney on the Bush side.
Might account for the difference, but you had a problem because you didn't have real specific neighborhood data. You had these big sort of county averages. Is that right?
Essentially, yes.
So you just don't know whether some or all of this difference between the undervote percentage using the Votomatic machine versus optical scanners could be accounted for these demographic differences at the more neighborhood level.
That is, if one uses common sense and recognizes that there are poor neighborhoods in every county, then such a position would be hard to maintain.
So you think it's, given the data that you have, you think that is unlikely to be the explanation, right?
I haven't seen the data, so I can't tell you.
Okay, so you can't tell me then. I'm just trying to figure out what your conclusion is, because we have these charts with a big bar that shows the undervotes high in the Votomatic and the low bar in the optical scanner, and you're telling me you don't know whether the explanation for that is because of demographic factors having nothing to do with the machines. Is that right?
No, that's wrong.
Okay, well tell me what you think about that.
I said that if I look at voter demographics like racial profile of the counties, which is the appropriate level of aggregation in which I have the data, then they can't explain all that difference.
Okay, so if you look at it at the county level, which is the best you can look at it right now, it doesn't explain all the difference, right?
Absolutely right.
Okay, and then you know that the Gore legal team, of course they're saying the Gore legal team is saying that there is some difference caused by the machine itself, and it's that the left side of the machine, people just aren't able to register the votes, right?
Objection, Your Honor. I'll sustain it.
Well,
I don't know if he's an expert in this. Are you trying to
I'm trying to get to...
lay a hypothetical?
Yeah, I'm trying to get what a statistician would do to analyze that hypothesis. I'm not asking him whether he thinks that there is something wrong with the left-hand
Let's
side.
put it
machine.
in, discuss it as a hypothetical rather than as a claim.
Your Honor, I would ask that it be a hypothetical that actually states what the claim is, which that one does not.
I'll state a new hypothetical. I want you to assume the following. That the Gore legal team is claiming that there were lots of people who attempted to vote or voted for Al Gore, but they were unable to knock that Chad through the ballot because there's something on the left-hand side of the machine that's different from the rest of the machine, because they vote more often on the left-hand side of the machine, and therefore there's more wear and tear on the rubber and more scratches on the template, and there's big piles of Chad underneath the left-hand side, and all of those things conspire to make it harder for people to punch through the Chad on the left-hand side of the machine than they do in the middle of the machine or on the right-hand side of the machine. Do you have my hypothetical in mind?
Objection, Your Honor, that's an improper hypothetical given what he stated.
Do you have my hypothetical in mind?
Yes, I do.
Now, if you wanted to test that hypothetical, could you look, and assuming you could get your hands on the data, you could look at the undervotes in the left-hand column where there's the vote for president, and then you could go over to the undervotes in the next column for senator, and the undervotes in the next column for governor, and the undervotes in the next column for all the other offices. And then you could compare those levels of undervotes in the Votomatic with the same levels of undervotes in the optical scan. You could do that as a statistician, could you not?
Actually, no.
Why not?
Because the way the optical scan cards are laid out, they don't have columns. They are questions one after the other, like an SAT score.
Well, you could take the, because my hypothetical, you remember, we're not saying there's anything wrong with the optical scanners. We're saying
But you're
that,
talking about the columns.
oh, yes, I'm sorry. So let me change it. If you wanted to test that hypothesis, that the undervotes for president is because the left-hand side of the machine's got all those problems that I enumerated, then what you'd like to do is compare the undervotes from the middle of the machine and the right-hand side of the machine to the corresponding offices in the optical scanners. You'd like to test that, wouldn't you, sir?
That would be an interesting question.
Because if, in fact, you had the same difference between undervotes for races that were in the middle of the Votomatic and on the right side of the Votomatic, if you had that same kind of differential with the optical scanners.
For the viewers who have been with us throughout the day, certainly this testimony does not have the intensity or the drama that we saw in the morning session. Phil Beck again questioning Professor Nicholas Hentgardner, and David Carwell. It's mostly an argument now about numbers. Is Phil Beck poking holes here, or is he buying time, or possibly both?
Well, it looks like he is trying to buy a little bit of time. Very often with when you have statistic testimony such as this, you get it on and get it off quickly. What he's doing is asking some questions as to whether the professor did some additional analysis or that he should have done additional analysis, and questioning some of his conclusions that he reached. But so far he seems to, as you said, just sort of be poking holes at it, not really, damaging the credibility of the witness significantly at this point.
We saw some charts earlier. We may possibly see more at any moment, but in the meantime, back inside Circuit Court.
There's a 20% undervote using the Votomatic. And then you looked over at 52 counties using the optical scanner, and there's only a 2% undervote. You say that would be meaningless to you?
I'm sorry, sir. In which state are you?
Well, I'm making up the numbers of counties, so don't hold me to the numbers of counties.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, because the number didn't add up.
Yes, I'm sure they didn't. How many counties are there in Florida?
67, sir.
How many use Votomatics?
About 15.
So we look at 15 counties that use Votomatics, and we find an undervote rate for the judges. And then we look at how many counties have optical scanners.
It's still, in some judge races, in some of the counties, the participation might be greater.
How many counties have scanners?
They have, well, there would be, I have 32 plus 9. There are about 40 plus.
Okay, so here I am, the statistician, and wouldn't it be interesting in testing the hypothesis that I attributed to the Gore legal team to take a look at how the undervotes compare for the county judges in my 15 votomatic counties with how they filled out the dots in the 40 plus optical scanning counties? That would be significant, wouldn't it?
It would be interesting, but I want to remind you again, not all the races in each county will be competitive. Therefore, the participation will depend much more on who is up for election in that county than probably the method of counting or voting. And so I am not convinced. I mean, this is hypothetical. You asked me, what would I expect from such data? I said, I'm not sure if I can see the difference, because I expect a lot of variation. There will be popular judges and hated judges.
That's why you look at all the counties rather than just picking one county where there's the dirty rotten judge and one county where there's the real popular judge.
Can we move this to another race?
The congressman, you know that every 2 years we elect members of the House of Representatives here in the United States?
Yes, I do.
And you know that they're not elected in column 1, they're elected over there in column 3 or 4, right?
I would assume so.
Wouldn't it be interesting to you, if you really wanted to get to the bottom of this hypothesis that I keep attributing to the Gore legal team, to look and see whether the undervote differential is pretty much the same in the congressional races in the votomatics versus the optical scanners as it is in the presidential election over there in the first column?
It's a hypothetical. Again, the House of Representatives, there will be an aggregation of counties that will vote for one given representative. There will be more than one from the state of Florida, and so depending on which county you are, you're going to be voting for different representatives, and therefore you're going to have different subgroups or different groups of counties voting for different individuals. And so the fact that, again, we're comparing different races for different individuals is confounding the problem of getting the difference between the effects of the votomatic and the optical scan. It is really by looking at a major election like a presidential election that one can at least hope to see some of this effect.
Well, did you know that in the state of Florida, there's statewide elections for the state Supreme Court?
No, I didn't.
Well, take my word for it that the same fellas and ladies run
Is there a hypothetical we're going to ask now?
Yes.
Let's keep it in the form of hypothetical, and let's don't attribute it to anybody.
I want you to assume, Professor, that when the people of Florida vote, you like some water here before we continue?
Yes.
Thank you very much. No, you can continue.
Okay.
Thank you.
I want you to assume, Professor, that the people of Florida vote whether to retain the judges who are on the Florida Supreme Court. And I want you to assume that the same judges are up for retention in every county in Florida. And I want you to assume that there are also occasionally constitutional amendments that are proposed to the state constitution that are up in every county in Florida the same way.
Okay.
Now, if you wanted to test the hypothesis that I keep attributing to the Gore legal team, that there's something wrong with the rubber and the plastic and the chads on the left-hand side of the ballot, would you want to look at the undervote percentages for those other statewide races using the other columns of the votomatic versus when people write it in on the optical scanner? Would you want to look at that?
Yes, provided the judges or all the slates are presented in the same order in every county.
Okay, I'll ask you to assume that they are.
Okay.
Okay. You'd like to look at that.
It seems like a reasonable question.
And if, in fact, the votomatic results in the same kind of undervotes or the same kind of differential of undervotes between the votomatic and the optical scanner, for these other races, that would be an indication that the Gore legal team just hasn't gotten it right when they're talking about the left side of the ballot, right?
Objection, Your Honor. Again, it's not a proper hypothetical. He's again attempting to attribute positions to this side and not asking a hypothetical question.
Well, I'll just strike that portion of the hypothetical that has attribution, but he's asked the question, and if the professor can answer it, he can answer.
Can you answer that?
Yes, if you go slowly through it again.
Okay. My assumption is that we have statewide ballot or statewide question of shall we retain the judges? And they're listed in the same order, both on the Votomatic and on the optical scanner ballot. And that we have constitutional amendments that are proposed that have exactly the same words, you vote yes or no, on Votomatic that are on optical scanners. Now, if with that set of assumptions in mind, you're with me so far? Mm-hmm. Now, I'm a statistician who wants to test the hypothesis that the reason that the presidential undervote is higher with the Votomatics than it is with the optical scanners is because the rubber's too hard on the left side underneath the president, the plastic template is scratched, there's little piles of chads underneath, and all those things are stopping people from voting, and it's peculiar to the left side of the Votomatic. Now, if you wanted to test that hypothesis, wouldn't you want to look at how the undervotes compare for these other statewide propositions where somebody's not on the left side of the ballot, but in the middle or on the right side of the ballot? Would you want to look at that to test that hypothesis?
I would like to test that, but I will have to ask you, what is the conclusion you expect me to deliver?
It is 3:16 local time in Florida. We are 6 hours into today's trial. David Carwell, it may seem a bit tedious at times because we've gotten to a numbers game, but tell us where we are.
Well, we are in a numbers game. They're trying to show that there's a statistical anomaly between the returns of the various counties, between the manual recount and the ballots that went through the machines, to try to show that the recount as done in Broward County would show that there were a lot of votes that could be picked up. Right now, Phil Beck for the Bush team is cross-examining the witness and posing some hypotheticals to him, and I think he's probably trying to show that perhaps he didn't do a complete enough analysis, or that there are other factors that might explain the differences, not just that there was an undervote.
Greta Van Susteren was with us earlier. Now I want to go up to Washington, D.C. and welcome Roger Cossack to our legal team today. Roger, you've been listening throughout the day, but how are you? We have not heard from you just yet. Why don't you go ahead and jump in and weigh in on what we are seeing and hearing inside of Circuit Court today in Leon County?
Well, these are the things that lawyers have to do. You know, you never know the facts that are going to get thrown at you, and suddenly you have to have a lawyer cross-examine a master statistician on statistics. And I can tell you that as the contest between the statistician and the lawyer, the statistician opens up a prohibitive favorite in knowing what he's talking about as opposed to the cross-examination of the lawyer. But we see how lawyers have to prepare themselves to cross-examine various witnesses that they may never have even anticipated. So this is what we're seeing. This is a tough subject. I think anybody who's ever tried to study statistics in their life, I know, you know, I made a furtive attempt at UCLA. This is very difficult things, and it's just a difficult subject.
Roger, we brought our calculators today. Here's Gene Randall again there in Washington. Gene, hello, good afternoon to you again.
Hi, Bill, sitting right next to Roger. And Roger, first of all, nice going yesterday when the Supreme Court heard the case, and you were the first one out to tell us at least what half the case was like, and it was terrific work, so thanks for that.
Well, thank you. It was a great opportunity.
Now, on what's going on today, this seems mind-numbing to average people. I'm an average person.
Yeah.
What am I to make of this?
Well, it is mind-numbing. Let's say it what it is. I mean, what you have is a statistician who is comparing certain kinds of returns and saying, statistically, if you have a return or vote patterns in one direction, they should be either consistent or inconsistent, comparing as to how it should be with other sets of returns. And this is what statisticians study. They study the patterns and the way numbers come up, and this is what this man is a master of. And he's saying, look, if you have a certain set of statistics that indicate this, for certain kinds of offices, then you should have certain kinds of statistics that indicate comparable things in other kinds of offices. And, you know, my heart immediately goes to the poor lawyer who has to cross-examine him, who I'm sure if he's anything like the rest of us lawyers could not get away from statistics fast enough when we were undergraduates in school.
Roger, before we get back to the courtroom, what do you make of the timeline here? I mean, how in the world is this going to be concluded in a reasonable period of time? I mean, the judge mentioned 12 hours at the outset. It doesn't look like it's going that way.
Yeah, this is a very difficult thing. You know, and this is just the initial part. I mean, as I know you've been told several times by Greta and other lawyers, that what they have to prove here is two things. One, that there were either illegal votes that were counted or legal votes that weren't counted, and that's what I think the thrust of the argument is. And look, not only were they not counted, but it would make a substantial difference in this election. And so that's what this evidence is all about, to try and convince the judge that there is a substantial difference and that these patterns mean something. And it's going slowly, and this is tedious testimony. And, you know, 12 hours, I wonder whether or not they'll be working tomorrow, oh, groan, he said. But I think that there's a very good chance, you know, this is not going to be over in 12 hours.
And by the way, Bill, we've been told that Vice President Al Gore is getting set to leave his official residence here in Washington. We're not sure where he is going. Earlier today, as we have shown you in the pictures from Texas, George W. Bush held a very high-profile meeting today with the Republican leaders of Congress, Trent Lott from the Senate side and Denny Hastert from the House side, acting very much the part of President-elect, in effect saying this presidential election is a done deal. Bill?
Gene, thank you. Roger, also thanks to you in Washington. Professor Hengartner still on the stand here in Leon County. We'll take this opportunity to get a quick timeout. Back in 2 minutes with more in Tallahassee. Stay with us here.
Kettle.
They're a lot here.
Yeah.
Do they all have that?
Hurt if you flick it.
That's like a whole different fruit.
Decisions. But are you giving the important ones enough thought? Like your financial picture, for instance. ING. Insurance, mutual funds, banking, retirement plans, employee benefits. Make a choice. Choose ING.
Need extra cash? Don't charge it on your credit cards. Get a second mortgage with no closing costs from Ditech.com. With a second mortgage, you can consolidate all your existing high-interest debts, get the cash you need for any purpose, and end up with one lower monthly payment. A second mortgage with no closing costs is smart money from Ditech.com. Log on now for fast online approval or call us at 1-800-71-FIXED.
Come on, United. Come on. Football, eh? Reminds me of my days with United. Incredible. We won the cup. Back in 35 it was.
With a smarter search on your MSN homepage, you'll find everything you're looking for faster.
Top of all them.
Usually on the first try.
Oh, scored a hat-trick.
So which one are you doing, Grandad?
I was away when they took this and I was fighting in Africa. Mosquitoes, malaria.
One energy company had an idea to build an ultra-deepwater drill ship capable of drilling nearly 2 miles below the ocean's surface. And last year, that ship struck oil. Conoco, think big, move fast.
Once again, welcome back to Tallahassee. I'll tell you why we are here today. We're listening in on this hearing here in Leon County Circuit Court. The Gore team, the plaintiffs in this case, want to start counting ballots and they want to do it ASAP. However, the Bush team says not so fast. First, we must find out if there's a reason to count those ballots. In question right now, the Gore team is looking at about 14,000. However, there are greater than 1 million right now here in Leon County. David Cardwell with us once again. We've been here for better than 6 hours. Have we moved the ball any direction just yet?
Well, I said it when the court took the lunch recess. I thought they were running east and west on the football field instead of north and south, and they needed to make some long passes. Well, I think they're still into their short running game at this point. A little bit, but they're still looking for that first down.
It is late in the college football season. Nonetheless, I think the analogy suits today.
Right.
Back inside once again, Phil Beck, an attorney with the Bush team.
I don't have the data to support them.
Did you, sir, attempt to collect some data from prior elections to test the hypothesis that the reason that there's this big undervote difference in the presidential race is because there's something about the left-hand column that people just are not as likely to be able to push the chat through?
Yes, I did.
And as I recall, well, you have filed what we've referred to here as a proffer of direct testimony in the Supreme Court of Florida, right?
Yes, I did.
Just a couple days ago. And did you also sign an affidavit? I can't remember. You signed an affidavit too, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And that was one that was being used by the Gore legal team when they were fighting in some other courts about these ballots, right?
Yes, I did.
And in that, in your affidavit and your proffer of proof, did you talk about how you wanted to test this hypothesis, that there's something about the left-hand column that thwarts people as they're trying to vote? And so you compared some data from other elections, or another election that took place a couple years ago.
Yes, I did.
Okay, and that was the 1988 election, right?
No,
1998.
Thank you.
Okay, and in the 1998 election, well, let's look at what your proffer said to the Supreme Court of Florida. Is this up here on the screen? I don't know if you can see it. He's got a screen there, Your Honor. I think he can see too.
I have a screen here, but...
Is this up here? Yeah. This proffer of direct testimony of Nicholas Hengartner, is that what you submitted to the Supreme Court of Florida?
Your Honor, that misstates the document. It's clearly captured for the Leon County, for this court.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, it was. Well, did you know it was being submitted to the Supreme Court of Florida, Professor?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Well, it was. So this is something that you understood was being submitted to this court.
Actually, I understood that this was a draft, and I wasn't aware that it was submitted. But
okay. Well, you're aware that. Well, you. Let's take a look at something else then that you were aware of. Here's a sworn affidavit of Nicholas Hengartner, and you can ignore the Bush for president at top. That was a fax indication rather than on your affidavit.
I see. I was looking for a rat somewhere in there too.
Well, I think we'll actually find something very much like that as we go through here. So let's move on. And is that your signature there on the last page of this affidavit? Let's go to paragraph 6 of your affidavit.
Yes.
And let's see if I can get the two. Oops, excuse me. I'm going to try to get all of paragraph 6 up in front of us. Okay, so we start over here. That's the beginning of paragraph 6. I'm just going to stick that up out of the way for a minute. Get these on top of one another. Okay, here we go. And I'll just kind of read along here and ask you what you were doing in this experiment. I have analyzed the number of votes cast in the senatorial and gubernatorial races in the 1998 election for all 67 Florida counties. Statewide in that election, 1.6% more votes were counted in the gubernatorial race than in the senatorial race statewide. So both of these are statewide races, right?
Yes, they are.
And so statewide, a little bit more, 1.6% more were for the governor's race than the senator's race, right?
Right.
In Palm Beach County, there were 3.5% more votes in the governor's race than the senator's race, right?
Right.
So here we've got a bigger differential in Palm Beach than elsewhere. Then you say it's the fourth largest ratio in all of the 67 counties, all of which correspond to counties using punch cards. Now what is, it says in fact, of the 27 counties that relied on punch cards, 17 had a ratio higher than 1, while in the 38 counties that use an optical system, only 14 had a ratio higher than 1. Statistically, there is evidence that there is an association between the type of voting system used and the ratio of the number of participants in the gubernatorial and senatorial races. Now let me just stop there. What you're saying is that what kind of voting machine you use, there's a relationship between that and whether there's more people voting for governor or more people voting for senator, right?
Right.
So that if you use the optical scanning method, you get a different number than if you use the vote-o-matic method, right?
Right.
Okay. And then it says that this suggests.
Well, can you repeat the last question just to be sure what I said right too?
Yes, sir. You want me to read that back?
Sure.
So that if you use the optical scanning method, you get a different number than if you use the vote-o-matic method, right? Answer right.
Different number in what?
Well, I'm not sure what I meant by number, but you tell me what you meant so far in the stuff that we've read.
Do you understand what the ratio bigger than 1 means?
I think so, but I'm not sure that everyone else here does, so. So why don't you help out the unenlightened?
Okay, a ratio bigger than, so what I'm comparing here is the number of votes cast for the Senate race. And I'm comparing that with the number of votes cast for the governor's race. And just so that the number jives and are consistent with what I wrote there, I looked at the ratio of number of votes cast for the governor divided by the number of votes cast for the senator. That is possibly, if there are more votes cast for the governor than the senator, the ratio will be bigger than 1. If there are less votes cast for the governor than the senator, the ratio will be less than 1. If I talk about the 3.5 more votes, that means simply the actual fraction or the ratio was 1.035. So that's what I mean by these numbers. So I'm comparing now and asking myself, looking at the governor's race, or how many of these counties had an increase in participation, and how many of these counties had a decrease in participation, depending on if they use punch cards or optical scanners.
Okay. Now then, I put up the remainder of paragraph, what was it, paragraph 6? The paragraph that we were on. And it says, this suggests that the observed effect cannot be solely explained by the geography, demography, or socioeconomic effect. Same kind of thing you talked about before in terms of the undervotes in these counties versus optical scanning counties, right?
Objection, Your Honor. I think the sentence was left out in the reading.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did I leave out? Did I?
You started, yeah.
I'm sorry. I'll go right up there. Excuse me. There we go. So starting at the top, is this right now, Council? Want me to go higher? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. We'll go right to the top. And if I read this before, forgive me. So we went through these numbers. I'm just going to point up here so we're all in the same place. We went through that there's more for one in Palm Beach than in the rest of the state, fourth largest ratio, etc. I think we got at least to here. In fact, of the 27 counties that relied on punch cards, 17 had a ratio larger than 1. We got that far, remember? While of the 38 counties that used an optical system, only 14 had a ratio of larger than 1. Now, let's continue on. Statistically, there is evidence that there is an association between the type of voting system used and the ratio of the number of participants in the gubernatorial and senatorial races. Both the punch card and the optical voting system are used across the entire state. That's the difficulty we had before with the judges, right? But here we've got statewide elections, so everybody's voting for the same guys in the same order, right?
Probably.
Well, that's why you put it in there, right?
No, what I said is that both of these elections do appear statewide.
Fine. This suggests that the observed effect, that is the difference between who's voting for whom, cannot be solely explained by geography, demography, or socioeconomic effect. In other words, it's not that the guys who are voting more often for the governor are rich people and the people voting more often for a senator are poor people, or vice versa. You're saying, you know, that's not the cause of this disparity, right?
Not solely.
Okay. Then you say the only logical conclusion which remains is that the voting method differentiates between the races. When you say races here, you mean the offices that people are running for, not black and white type races, right?
Yes.
Okay. So it's the voting machine differentiates between the offices that people are running for. So then,
again, objection. Is the voting method?
No.
The voting method, I'm sorry. The voting method, because there is no machine with the optical scanners. You fill in the little dots, or the holes. Then you say, a closer inspection of the Palm Beach County ballot reveals that the senatorial race was recorded in the first column and the gubernatorial race in the second.
Yes.
Okay, so let's just draw up on my board over here so we can keep this in mind. Here we have a row. The first row, that's the column. That's the column on the left side of the ballot, right? And these are, I'm pretending that these are little the holes that you stick the stylus through and you punch out the chads. Okay?
Okay.
So this is the left side of the ballot. And which race is over here on the left side of the ballot?
I believe it must be the Senate race.
Okay, Senate.
Do you know why?
And then your affidavit said that a closer examination of the Palm Beach ballot said that it was the governor's race in the second row, right?
That's what I think, yes.
And put the gov. So we've got the second row here. And then let's continue on with what your affidavit said. It says here that if the optical voting method is neutral, that means the little IBM cards that you fill in the holes, if that method is neutral with respect to the column position of the races, it must be that either the punch card reader records fewer first column votes than were first cast, or the punch card reader, down here, neutral, it must be that either the punch card reader records fewer first column votes than were cast. Let me just stop there. What you mean by that is people tried to vote, but they were unable to punch that chad through, right?
Let me see.
I might be able to direct your attention.
No, that's fine. I just need to read it. more for me. It's bad English. Shoot.
Well, no one's holding you to your English. But let's just focus on what you meant. What you said here is that it must be that either the punch card reader records fewer first column votes than were cast. So the first step of that is, it must be that either people are trying to vote, casting votes, but it's not getting recorded in the first column.
Yes.
For example, because of the hard rubber, that whatever. Yeah. Or, where's the or?
There's an or somewhere.
Yeah.
Or the punch card reader records more votes. The second column votes.
Or the punch card reader records more second column votes than were actually cast.
Yeah, that is a mistake.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
That's why I said it's bad English. That's...
Yeah. So what you're saying then is the second answer doesn't make any sense. We'll set that aside.
I apologize.
No apology necessary. But what you did say then is that the only explanation for this difference is that the punch card doesn't record it every time somebody tries to vote in the first column, right?
Or there were more votes cast for the second race.
Now, comparing the first column senatorial race with the fifth column controller race, so we go all the way over to the fifth column. And this is the...
To our viewers, we will continue to monitor things inside the hearing room, inside the trial at Circuit Court. Meanwhile, David Cardwell is with us, so is Roger Cossack. And David, for the Gore team right now, are they making a fair case now, or even a compelling case, as to why they should continue looking over these ballots that were brought up earlier this week?
Because of the time constraints they have, they really need to hit a home run here. We keep using our sports analogies. We'll switch sports, though. They really need to get something dramatic going here. They're running out of time. The clock is ticking on them. So far, they don't seem to have made a compelling case. They're showing that there are some vote discrepancies, there's some statistical anomalies, but they have multiple explanations. And that's basically what the Bush campaign is doing in response. They're trying to show that there are other explanations for this other than just the undervote.
So you're saying they are doing a fair job of raising some questions, but as to an affirmative answer as to why they should keep counting, that is still an open question.
That's right. They haven't gotten there yet.
The other point to bring up right now is in light of yesterday. It has not been a good day for the Gore team yesterday legally when you consider the state Supreme Court here throughout the butterfly ballot case and basically said there will not be a revote in Palm Beach County. That case will not live to see another day in Florida regarding this race. The other issue that was thrown out was the issue of speed, trying to speed up the trial. That petition was denied as well. And then if you look at the 11th Circuit in Atlanta, they took two cases yesterday. They're going to start on the first part of next week as to whether or not hand recounts were constitutional or not. All in all, how does that stack up in the big scheme of things? Significant or not?
Well, I think what all of this is showing is that it is very, very difficult when you want to try to overturn the results of an election. The presumption's in favor of the election, particularly once it's certified, and it's very difficult to get courts to intervene to change it. And what's going on is the courts are basically saying we're not going to do something, even though it's for the high office of president, we're not going to do something necessarily out of the ordinary. Let's have our regular process work its way up to us. So the need for speed that the Gore campaign has is running out of time.
And also we have talked about the contest period right now and how high the standard, the burden of proof is as well.
Right.
So, Roger Cossack, quickly up in Washington. Now let's go up to you and gather your thoughts. Dave and I were just talking about it. You can jump off our points or take your own. Good afternoon.
Well, I was just thinking about what you and David were saying about how they need something dramatic. I don't know if you remember the old Perry Mason show, but always at the end of the show, somebody from the audience would jump up and confess. And I think that's what they need to happen here. They need something dramatic. They need someone to jump up from the audience and say, I did it, and I'm glad. I mean, or I hid the votes, or they did something, because as David points out, it's absolutely true. It's, once a vote is certified, you have to show, you have to have a high burden of proof to overcome, to convince judges that they should get back involved in these things. And this is tedious and difficult testimony that is dragging out, and there's no great defining moment. There's no aha. There's nobody that stands up and says, you see, Judge, if I hold this one up to the mirror, it's got two sides to it, and it just gets difficult.
Hey, Roger,
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to read Judge Saul's mind in this case, but typically, how do judges react when, as you describe, it can be a very tedious testimony in nature, and that's what we've been hearing now for nearly 90 minutes, an hour and a half's time?
Well, you know, judges, believe it or not, are human like everybody else, and the human mind can take just so much of this, and I'm sure that he realizes the absolute importance of it, and he wants to give the Gore people a chance to make their point, but the longer it drags on without that defining moment, and everyone knows that the clock is ticking, there's going to come a time when this judge is going to say, is this about it? You got anything really better than this? And give him a cutoff time.
Yeah. Roger, if this will not be the last court appearance for these teams of attorneys, is one or the other of these teams, probably the Gore team, at least interested in building a record?
Well, of course, and let me just make it clear that both teams are interested in building a record, and the reason I say that is because we don't know how this is going to end, and I really want to be clear to the viewers that, you know, even with a little bit of levity here, I am not suggesting this is going to end one way or the other, because I don't know, and it would be unfair for me to do so. But both teams, both sides, want to have a record, because this case will clearly be appealed to the Florida Supreme Court, which, as we all remember last time, put that dramatic decision out 7-0 in Vice President Gore's favor. So, you know, that, which again doesn't mean that they would feel the same way about this case, but clearly a record is being developed with the idea of going to the Supreme Court.
Roger, if there is no smoking vote-o-matic to this point, is there a sleeper here, and that is the Seminole County case?
Is there a sleeper? Gee, Gene, that's an interesting use of a term. Yeah, the Seminole County case, I think, is where the action may be eventually in this case. You know, that's the case where there's 4,700 ballots that are being challenged because of what one side says is manipulation and the other side says was assistance. Question is, the notion is that these ballots, information that was missing from these applications for the ballots were filled in, and then which allowed the ballots then to be utilized. The argument is you can't do that, even if it's a benign action, you can't do that, and the remedy being that those votes are thrown out. There is precedent, at least in the state of Florida, not in presidential elections,
Roger,
where those things may happen.
Roger, thank you. I think I once owned a smoking Vegematic. Bill?
Hey, Gene, I got your smoking vote-o-matic right down here in Tallahassee. Thanks. Gene and Roger, thanks. Back with you shortly. Meanwhile, though, outside of Circuit Court, here's Mark Potter. Mark, what are you picking up on over there?
Well, I agree with what others are saying. This testimony is dragging on, and this is not going nearly as quickly as everyone thought it would go. The judge had asked for a 12-hour hearing. The attorneys for Vice President Gore had asked to speed this along. They were concerned that the witnesses for for Governor Bush would take too long. There would be too many of them. There were 90 originally on that witness list. That was pared down to 20, but the point is we haven't even gotten to the witnesses for Governor Bush yet. We are only, if you can believe this, at 10 minutes till 4 Eastern Time. We are only on the second witness of the day. We have not even gotten to the other side's witnesses yet, and this is going on. It is laborious testimony. I think that it would be safe to say that perhaps some of the most dramatic sound that we have heard today, the most dramatic statements, came in the beginning with the opening statements, and that's not the evidence that the judge would be considering. And so this is a difficult proposition going from this point, I think, for the attorneys for Vice President Gore. We don't know what else is going to be happening today, but we know that this is dragging along, and this statistical analysis, this discussion is probably not going the way that they would want in terms of speeding along and being the scintillating and direct testimony that they would need to convince the judge. And as we have heard, there's a lot that this judge needs to decide before he says ultimately, yes, we are going to count the votes. Now, there are a couple of there is a split in the argument here between the two sides. We have talked about that. One side says that that votes were cast but not counted, and they should be. And that's the attorneys for the vice president. The attorneys for the governor say that is not the issue. The issue is whether the boards themselves, the canvassing boards, overstepped their bounds, abused their discretion. They argued that they did not. They made the choices they thought they should make. They have the power to do that. They are charged with that power. There is no proof that they did anything wrong, and that's the standard that the judge must go by. So that is what this all must boil down to eventually. The judge has to decide whether he should even call for a recount, a partial recount. What are the standards? We haven't even gotten to that point yet, and we're at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Time is ticking, and I cannot imagine how this can finish up today. And that's the impression that everyone here has right now that I've been talking to outside the courthouse, who is people who have been coming in, who have been watching this. They're just shaking their heads, saying this is not going exactly the way that we had thought earlier today. Back to you.
All right, Mark Potter outside Circuit Court, and as Mark was talking and speaking, we're now almost upon our 7th hour today in today's trial. While we talk now, we want to take it outside the courtroom because there is another critical element here in Florida that may go a long way in determining those precious 25 electoral votes. CNN's Kate Snow now reporting that the state legislature, the Senate President John McCain, and the House Speaker Tom Feeney have agreed to sign a joint resolution on Monday to call for a special session that will begin of the complete state House and state Senate here in Tallahassee. That, again, special session will start on Wednesday of this week. This past week, for about 3 days, a special committee made up of 14 members from the House and Senate got together, 8 Republicans, 6 Democrats, to explore the possibility for a special session. It was recommended from that committee to the entire state legislature that indeed should be the case. The lines, the voting lines anyway, went right along partisan lines and party lines. 8 Republicans, 5 Democrats voting for and against a special session. But again, the Republicans in this matter think that it's critical right now that they preserve the 25 electoral votes in case the court cases continue to drag on. Again, the critical date, the 12th of December. Up to Washington now. Here's CNN's Jonathan Karl, who is tracking the steps of the Vice President today. Jonathan, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Bill. Well, the Vice President has sent the word out to his top aides that this is a family day. This is not a day where he'll be making public appearances or making any statements about the proceedings. In fact, not even really talking to any of his top aides except a few emails going back and forth. But just a short while ago, the Vice President did leave his residence, went out the back door, we're told, with his wife Tipper for a cup of coffee. The Vice President, other than that, has remained in his residence. One thing he did do was have lunch with Tommy Lee Jones, of course, the Oscar-winning actor of such movies as The Fugitive, and a college roommate of Al Gore's from back in the Harvard days. And of course, Tommy Lee Jones was somebody who spoke at the Democratic Convention on Gore's behalf, speaking as a friend of the Vice President's. Tommy Lee Jones, we're told, was at the Vice President's residence, was there for lunch, and also had a rather lengthy meeting with the Vice President. No word on what those 2 old college roommates were talking about. Meanwhile, the Vice President's team watching these proceedings, those who aren't in the courtroom watching them very intently, very worried about the sluggish nature. I spoke to one top aide who was watching this, who said that he's worried that not only may this not be over with today, but he's wondering, will they really be able to wrap this up tomorrow, given how slow this is going. And of course, if you remember, when the Vice President's team made its appeal to the Florida State Supreme Court to start a recount immediately, what they were saying is that if we wait until the weekend, if we wait till this weekend to start counting votes, there would be serious question whether or not the votes could actually be counted in time for that December 12th deadline. So if this proceeding goes on, not only through today, but through tomorrow, they, again, very worried about how quickly those votes could be counted. Bill.
All right, Jonathan Karl in Washington, again tracking the very latest on the Vice President, Al Gore. The hearing continues here in Tallahassee. We'll rejoin in a moment. First, quick 2-minute timeout. More after this break.
Tonight on CNN's Capital Gang, the always outspoken Democratic political strategist James Carville joins us with his take on the latest political and legal developments affecting Election 2000. Tonight, 7 Eastern on CNN.
Tonight on a CNN special report, weeks after Election Day, the battle for the presidency continues in court. The latest on the Vice President's contest in Florida. Complete coverage of the day's proceedings. Tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Sunday on CNN's Late Edition, the last word in Sunday Talk. As the Supreme Court prepares to rule, we'll hear from top Bush and Gore officials. Sunday, noon Eastern on CNN.
In December, Hollywood's best movies are in demand. Dennis Quaid races to change history in Frequency. Mel Gibson fights for independence in an American epic, The Patriot. Jackie Chan takes on the Wild Wild West in the hilarious Shanghai Noon. And Fred and Barney head for the bright lights in the Flintstones' Viva Rock Vegas. Enjoy these great movies and more without ever leaving home. Order in-demand pay-per-view from AT&T Broadband tonight.
Folks, come see me today. I'll save you money. Right now, drive home this brand new 2000 Malibu, only $149 per month. Here's a super buy on a brand new 2000 S10 extended cab pickup, loaded with extras, only $159 per month. Drive home this new full-size extended cab 4x4 pickup for the unbelievable payment of $169 per month. Don't delay. Come out today. You know the place. That's Bruce Chevrolet in Hillsboro, a name you can trust.
Fox News Channel, the most powerful name in news. Neil Cavuto, Brit Hume, Shepard Smith. Powerful coverage. Wall Street, Washington, the world. Bill O'Reilly, Hannity and Combs, Paul Azan. Powerful insights, confronting the politics, the newsmakers, and the issues. Fair and balanced. Fox News Channel, the most powerful name in news. We report, you decide.
What if you could be far away and still be close to everyone and everything that's important to you? If you could talk to anyone in your family the instant you thought about them? If you could have the information you need come to you when you wanted it? And you had the power to make all the pieces of your life come together more than you ever imagined. Welcome to the future. Wireless from AT&T. Your world, close at hand.
What's next for the Bush and Gore camps? Tonight, 9 Eastern.
Once again, welcome back to Tallahassee. I'm Bill Hemmer, live here in the Florida Capitol. We will go back inside the hearing shortly. But again, the news of the hour, CNN's Kate Snow reporting to us that on Monday, a proclamation will be signed between the leader of the House and the leader of the Senate here in the state capital of Tallahassee. They will call for a special session that will begin on Wednesday of next week. Many times we thought it may start on Tuesday, getting word now that it will be Wednesday, again, forthcoming this week. And with that, I want to pass things off to my colleague, Gene Randall in Washington. Gene, I've been sitting here for about 10 hours, since about 6 o'clock this morning. I'd love to stay. I'm going to cut out for now. It is all yours, my friend. I'll see you again tomorrow, okay?
All right, Bill, thanks very much. We're going back to the Leon County courtroom in Tallahassee, Florida, for more of this hearing in which the Gore team is trying to convince a judge he should order a recount of some 14,000 contested ballots, the goal being reversing the results in Florida, transforming Al Gore into the winner of that state, giving him its 25 electoral votes and making him the president-elect.
May we be permitted? Yes, sir. Mr. Who was that? That was Mr. O. Yeah, that's part of that is Mr. Bex, too. If your permission, Mr. Booth would like to return to being able to see. Please call the next witness.
Your Honor, that completes our two witnesses that we identified as witnesses. And if the court would just give me a moment to make sure that we've offered all of our exhibits.
Would you suggest maybe this is an appropriate time to take a 15-minute recess?
This would be great for us, Your Honor.
Be well taken. Court will stand in recess until 4:15.
A 15-minute break in Leon County, Florida, in Tallahassee. You saw David Boies, the chief recount attorney for the Gore team, just a moment ago. There have been 2 witnesses so far, both called by the Gore team. Let's go to Jonathan Karl, who is tracking the movements of the Gore campaign here in Washington, including a lunch today with actor Tommy Lee Jones. Jonathan?
Well, Gene, first, immediate response from the Gore team to the latest efforts by the Florida State Legislature to move a step closer towards appointing their own set of electors